Okay. My name is Jeanelle McPhail, and I'm here with Mrs. Jeanelle Bronson. We're at UF Law on the second floor here in Gainesville, and we're going to begin our interview. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Jeanelle Bronson. I graduated in 1978.
Okay. All right. So I guess let's begin. Did you want to start anywhere or? Okay, I'll start. Okay. Can you please tell me about where you're from?
I was born in Winter Park, Florida. In probably about fourth grade, I moved to Edenville, Florida, which is the first black incorporated town in the country. I attended Hungerford High School. Actually, let me go back. I don't know if you need to go this far back or not. When you asked me that question.
Definitely. But, start from the beginning.
I was born in 1951, and at that time there was we were still in segregated schools.
Okay.
So I attended the segregated elementary school in Winter Park, which is Hannibal Elementary, and that has since been converted into a historical site.
Okay.
I then attended another segregated elementary school, which was Webster Elementary School. And then from there, I attended Hungerford High School, which was the segregated black school for students from Winter Park and Edenville.
Okay.
The other black segregated school for students in Orlando was Jones High School.
Okay.
I attended Hungerford High School until my senior year. In my senior year, I transferred to Edgewater High School because by then we had started desegregation in Orange County. And in fact, we had started desegregation a year or two earlier. And they when I say they, I mean the school district had selected which teachers would be moved to which schools in order to facilitate integration. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, at that time, it was the belief that most of the white teachers who were not up to par would be sent to the black schools. Okay. So, and in fact, in order to facilitate integration, they changed the name of Hungerford High School to Wymore Technical School. But the point being is to encourage white students to attend, because at that point it was not required. You were not required to attend school in your zone. And so they changed the name to sort of make it a little more palatable to white students. Okay. At some point in my 10th and 11th grade years, my teachers said, look, you need to get out of here because they're putting the worst teachers in this school, and they're changing the curriculum to make it a technical school as opposed to an academic school. Okay. So as a result, I transferred to Edgewater High School, which was at that point was a predominantly white school. Okay. I graduated from Edgewater High School, and then from Edgewater High School, I attended Rollins College in Winter Park, which was not far from home. And I attended there for 4 years. I majored in social studies, social sciences, and I took enough education courses that would allow me to teach. Mm-hmm. Because at that point in my life, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So when I graduated from Rollins, I taught school for 2 years. One at an elementary school and then at a middle school. And during that time, I also studied and took the LSAT. Okay. And then applied to law school. My husband and I got married the year after I graduated, probably 6 months after I graduated, my husband and I both applied for law school at the same time.
Okay.
And we were both accepted at University of Florida. And that's the beginning. That's why we are here.
So, did you choose UF because it was close to home? I realized that a lot of your schools were close to home.
Yes, that's exactly why I chose it, because I had applied at some other schools in the Midwest and in the Northeast and had actually been accepted at some of those schools, but I opted for going closer to home.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there any reason for that? Is it because you wanted to stay close to family, or?
For that reason, as well as I came from a very small town environment, and I felt more comfortable.
In Gainesville? Okay, that's interesting. Did you like being in Gainesville? Was it similar?
I was actually hesitant to be in Gainesville because I had gone to undergrad at 5 miles from home, and and I had read some things about Gainesville. For instance, when I started law school, there were articles and billboards that said how many women were raped in Gainesville. I mean, because it's a college town, and that was that happened more frequently.
Yeah, okay.
And so I was a little hesitant about being in Gainesville, but I survived.
That's very good, actually. I didn't know that we had like billboards for things like that. Now all the billboards are like funny billboards, like your wife's hot, fix the AC. That's the billboard that has stuck with me since I've been here. I saw it coming from the airport and I was like, that's funny. All our billboards are more catchy, so.
Well, because of students, youth.
Okay, that actually makes sense. Okay. So now that we're at UF, is there anywhere you wanted to start, or do you just want to start from 1L to 3L?
Well, when I say we, I mean my husband and I started law school. We left. He was a probation officer.
Okay.
For juvenile probation officer, and I had been teaching school. There was a recession, so there were not a lot of jobs available. We were actually quite nervous about making the decision to come to law school because we were concerned that we might not succeed in law school. And when we got to law school, the dean had a meeting with all new students, and one of the things he did was he gave us the statistics of how many students would not be able to succeed in law school.
Okay.
He warned us against going to the football games and told us how important it was to spend most of our time studying. And, that made us even more nervous about law school because I'm thinking, man, are we going to be able to succeed here? Or are we going to get kicked out of law school and have to go back home to be embarrassed and not have jobs, that we left jobs? And so, but we managed to do just fine.
You did well. I Googled. You did I think it said that you had like book award in evidence, I think legal writing, and I want to say something else.
I don't remember. I know criminal law was one of them.
Okay. All right. Was that your favorite subject? Did you have like a subject preference?
I didn't actually have a subject preference. Criminal law was quite interesting because, criminal facts about crimes are interesting. I had Professor Quarles as the criminal lawyer, and he was an older gentleman, and he was very strict and very matter of fact. But he had his teaching method was quite interesting, and the subjects were interesting.
You really okay. did you join any groups on campus while you were here? Any networking with other students?
We were encouraged from the very beginning to get involved in study groups. Okay. I tried that, but I was not particularly, it was not helpful to me. Okay. I frequently found that the study groups, other people in the groups had not studied, were not as prepared, or they talked about things that were irrelevant to getting prepared for the exams. And so my husband and I spent most of our time studying separately.
Okay. That's interesting. You work better alone with...
Yes, but I studied a lot. It was...
That's good.
And I think I was motivated by fear.
Really? Because of the orientation? Oh, it's fine. That's fine.
Maybe you may have to leave. I was very afraid in law school.
I'm not.
And I was, everybody when we were accepted at law school, family and friends and everybody, because I grew up in Eatonville, and it's a very small town. Mm-hmm. Everybody was very excited about us getting to go to law school. Okay. And all I could think when I got here was, gee, how embarrassed am I going to be if I can't make it in law school and have to go back home?
Yeah, I can see that. If it's like a close-knit group, family, like as you come back, it hasn't been 3 years. Why are you back? Okay. Did you know what you wanted to do when you came out of law school? Like any specific track?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, I was just, like I said, I was just thrilled to do well in law school. When when we were in law school, they would post you would have a student number, and they would post the grades on a wall by the library or something, and you would go up and look at your number. Mm-hmm. And the first grading period, when I went to look at my numbers, my grades, they were good grades, and I was totally surprised.
Really?
And in fact, I spent probably the next 2 weeks in fear that someone was going to come to me from administration and explain to me that somehow they had gotten the student numbers mixed up, and that they would take those grades away from me.
Why are you studying so much?
Yeah, but I literally was afraid that there was a mix-up
with the numbers. Okay.
And that they were going to say, no, those aren't really your grades. I walked around in fear of that.
That sounds like 1L fare, but like exceptionally.
Maybe I'm a little neurotic. Maybe I was a little neurotic. I don't know.
I'm going to try to scare myself into studying. I don't like study groups. I tried it. And then it's my friends, so it's harder, I think, for us to stay on topic.
Sure.
So that was my number one issue. I tried it in 1L, and I was like, we friendship, and we talk about, and then we go eat, and then it's been 3 hours, and we studied like a very small amount.
What I found most helpful in law school in terms of studying was to review the material before class, and then review take good notes during class, and then review those notes that night. And then when it's time for the exams, then it's just a matter of review as opposed to cramming.
At that time, I will take
that. Because, and if I didn't understand something, it was, I needed to go to the professor and ask questions.
Okay.
And in fact, what I would do when I was in school was, after class, I would slowly pack my books up, and I would notice that quite a few of the white students would gather around the professor and start talking and asking questions. I didn't have as many questions, but I would listen to their questions and listen to the professor's answers, and I think that helped me.
With what they were saying, do you feel as a Black student, Black woman at UF, that approaching professors was weird or?
Maybe weird, but not. I didn't feel that the professors said or did anything to cause me to feel that way.
Okay.
It's not something I was used to doing.
Okay.
But I observed that the students, quite a few students would surround the professor after class, and I just wanted to hear what they were saying, so that if they were going to get something that I didn't have, then I wanted to hear it.
Okay. When you were here, did you see a lot of faculty or administration that were Black people? Did you feel like they were more approachable, or?
There were not a lot of Black professors when I was in law school, as I remember. In fact, I probably only remember maybe a couple. But there were some younger professors who I felt reached out more to Black students who were trying to make us feel comfortable.
Okay.
Or maybe it was just any student that they were trying to make feel comfortable. I don't remember, but we had a professor, for instance, who would have a study session at his home, or he would even go to other students' homes and study. And so that students would feel comfortable in talking to him. Okay, that's... Also, I don't know what kind of outreach the UF had for minority students before I came, but I do recall that UF hired a dean. I think his name was Dean Thomas Moore. Yeah. And he was an assistant dean for minority affairs. Okay. And so his job was to try to help us, the minority students, succeed. And I recall him introducing the minority students to a study program. And I can remember this day it was called IRAC. And it was, do you still have that?
We use IRAC. Is it...
Issue, rule, application, and conclusion.
IRAC. My professors that say we don't have IRAC, I have a professor, Professor Tritt, that goes, professors will tell you they don't use IRAC, but they really mean you need to use IRAC. If you don't find the issue, then you fail the exam. If you don't find the rule, if you don't analyze that, if you don't give them a conclusion, you are missing something. Like, we spent an entire class just talking about that. We talked about that in orientation. Like, that's something that we still use, like, today. So that was, that's cool.
And I found that very helpful.
It has been.
Because they would tell us, they meaning other students, that the professors were, it was very different. It was different from undergrad because some of the professors would only have one exam the whole semester, and you'd have to, which meant that was your one shot at passing that class. And I tried really hard to do the IRAC.
For each?
Yes.
We still do one exam. So it's one exam, one major paper. Apart from Professor Wolf, and I want to say Professor Bartow and Professor Quinn, both of the last two are actually visiting professors. It was always one shot, and then you get like participation grade that is, if you're really good, you may get a bump up. If you're really bad, it doesn't matter. So it's not like a specific percentage all the time. It's just like, oh, you participated a lot, you have an A-. I will give you an A because I'm looking at 2 competing papers or 2 competing tests. So we still do that. It does give you...
And professors, when I was in school, different ones had different methods of grading. Some of them graded on a curve. Some of them just graded whatever the high scores were. Okay. So...
Okay.
Dean Moore like as I said, part of his job was to try and help minority students be successful. One of the things that he did when he was here was if you made a certain GPA at the end of the semester, he would take us out to lunch or dinner. And in fact, one year he took us to Tallahassee to have dinner with Justice Hatchett, who was the black judge, Florida Supreme Court at that time. And so he did different things to try to incentivize us.
That's actually really nice. We have, I guess, a diversity dean and kind of, I guess, administrative body, but it's, I think, more geared towards like career development, like more how to get a job, I guess, and less about, I don't know. I feel like maybe that's what I'm getting from it because I'm so focused on, I don't know what I want to do. So that's like my big thing is that I feel like in 12 I should have sparked. I want to do this. I don't know.
Well, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do even in the first year or the second year. But we were told that it's important to do things like internships so that you can get an idea as to what you might want to do. Okay. And so, and to take a variety of classes so that you could be exposed to more and it might give you an idea.
Right now I'm doing that. I think I'm taking things I never thought I'd take. So I'm trying to open up my mind. So I'm hoping by 3L year, I don't know.
Sure. We were told to try and get an internship. I don't recall there being a specific outreach to minority students from the Career Development Office. They were there, and you had to go in and apply and submit your resume, and they would submit. I don't know what their procedure was in terms of actually submitting the resumes to the different firms or organizations that would come on campus. But in my second year, Janet Reno, former Attorney General Janet Reno, was working at a private law firm in Miami at the time. She was with, I think the firm was Steele Hector and Gray, and she came to school, to the campus and interviewed, and I got a chance to interview with her. She also had a cousin who was the state attorney in Miami, and she was able to assist my husband in getting an internship with the state attorney's office in Miami, and we both spent a semester of law school in Miami. I clerked for Steele Hector, and he clerked for the state attorney's office.
Okay, so we call that, I guess now they call it the Gator Nation. I don't know if that's what they call it.
They didn't call it that. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my question is, well, you answered my question, whether or not you felt like, even though there wasn't a specific outreach to Black students, you felt like they met your needs or like what you wanted to help you with?
I guess they met my needs. It was probably 73, 74, no, 75, maybe 76. And I think there was a specific outreach from different firms and companies for affirmative action. Okay. Affirmative action was something that there was more of an emphasis on. And so I think some of the firms were interested. Okay. Because I also got to interview with a Chesterfield Smith's law firm. The name escapes me right now, but it was in Lakeland. Okay. And I think that was because they were also looking for minority students. Okay. And so I don't know if it was the Career Development Center or if it was the firms themselves that were making the outreach. Okay. Internships,
That's really cool, actually. How do you feel, or do you feel that UF helped you with, like, after you finished UF and you graduated, to prepare you for, like, studying for the bar and then for getting employment after?
Well, back in 77 and 78, I don't think the average law school prepared the average student for employment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think they prepared us. There was a different emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
It was academics, and I think the goal was to ensure that students had the resources to figure out where it is you needed to go to find things out, as opposed to saying these are the kinds of things you'll encounter in the workforce.
Okay.
I think that my understanding is that shifted some, because I didn't think the students were actually prepared for workforce when I was here. They did have a clinic. They did have a clinic, so that would prepare you if you wanted to go to work for the state attorney's office or the public defender's office.
Okay.
But if you wanted to do anything else,
you just had
you were on your own.
Okay.
And in fact, after actually going to work for a law firm, what some of the biggest complaints of the partners were that students were not prepared for the real world in terms of what it means to actually be a lawyer.
Okay.
You were good at research, but
we have more extensive programs for different fields here. We also have an externship requirement, which is different from an internship. So you can do a semester in practice or just an externship that is an unpaid credits. You get credits.
There's a requirement for an externship?
Starting with my year. So now we have an externship requirement of, I want to say, 6 credits. Some you get from just taking courses. You can get it from clinics, and you can get it from an external externship. It has to be public interest, unpaid, for it to count. And you have to have a faculty or a professor, depending, I'm not sure if like administration, that signs off on what you're doing.
Do they help you get that externship? Does anybody help you get it?
Most of the times. We have something called Simplicity, which is a website. So you have things that are posted as externships, internships, and then they have it by year. 1Ls have different ones, and then 2Ls and 3Ls tends to have different ones, I think, more geared towards possibly end goal employment, like putting you somewhere that might want to hire or might be a big help in a letter of recommendation for you being hired. So
now, the Career Development Center did help you work on your resume, and so and they gave you ideas about how to submit your resume and a letter that would enclose the resume.
Okay.
And I remember taking advantage of that. And I actually submitted my resume along with a letter to a judge, to Judge John Reed, who was a federal district judge in Orlando.
Okay.
And he interviewed me. And again, I think that part of his purpose was, again, affirmative action.
Okay.
Was to bring minority students into the judicial process, because I was the first minority student who was hired as a clerk in the Middle District of Florida in Orlando.
That's really
But I think
good.
that was because they wanted somebody.
I feel like that might be part of it, but you did also, I think, get the Book Award for legal writing. So I mean, I think now they do stress for us that writing is one of the most important things with like the memos for judges. So like even now, if you want to get a judge like clerkship in Florida, or if you want to even get to what separates like state from federal, is your writing. Definitely. Like now, my roommate is Ebony, and she clerked, and her writing is impeccable.
Yeah, writing is definitely important. Whenever I talk to students who are saying to me that they want to go to law school, and asking what kinds of courses they should take, I stress to them that English is extremely important.
Okay.
And, those kinds of classes are important. And that's important in practice as well, because you don't start out going into the courtroom. You start out doing research and writing memos, motions for summary judgment, and those kinds of things.
Okay. What did you do directly out of law school?
Well, that's what I did. Is I went to work for Judge Reed. He hired me for 1 year, but then decided that I should stay on for another year. So I was there for 2 years with him, and then I went out looking for a job in the real world, which was really kind of surprising to me, because at that point, if you were an attorney in Orlando, this was my understanding. It could be that I was totally have the wrong understanding or impression, but it was my impression that if you clerked for a federal judge, that it would be, this is in 1980, that it would be easy to get a job, that a lot of law firms would want to hire you simply because you had clerked for a federal judge. Well, that was not the case for me.
Okay.
I applied to, sent my resume to a lot of law firms, and most of them were not interested in me. And I felt that was because I was African American. That was only in Orlando, because that's where I wanted to be. Was in Orlando. And I got very few interviews, but there was a law firm with probably 10 or 12 lawyers in it, who did interview me and decided that they wanted to hire me. It was mostly a real property law firm. Okay. And I didn't have a lot of experience in real property, although clerking for a judge, you get all kinds of opportunities to learn about different subjects. Okay. But this fellow his name was Richard Swan. I don't know why they decided to hire me, but they did. And
you're good.
It was I was there for 12 years, and I at some point during that 12-year period they made me a partner. Okay. And I actually think, and this is probably not really relevant, but I think I became the first African American woman who became a partner in a mid-sized to large-sized firm in Orlando, in Central Florida.
That's very relevant. That's actually a really big accomplishment, especially at that time. I feel like Florida, it's just always behind the ball when it comes on to like civil rights. So actually, that's really early.
I think you're correct that Central Florida was sort of slow in that regard. Brown versus Board of Education was 1954, and it was like 1966 when we started
doing
integrating.
Okay.
So
Florida takes its time. There are a few states with Florida that they always seem to take a little longer. So that's actually a really big accomplishment that you were the first.
I think so. Don't hold me to it, but I think that. I'm just not aware of anybody else in Central Florida. Okay. Not Florida, the state of Florida. Okay. I don't know what was going on in South Florida or North Florida. Okay. And then after 12 years, the firm that I guess the whole country hit another recession. Okay. And the firm that I was with, the Richard Swan became heavily invested in the credit union, in banking. Okay. Okay. And banks went under.
Mm-hmm. So
I've forgotten which year it is, but this bank went under, and and that bank, we provided a lot of our business, the firm's business. The firm ultimately wound up dissolving.
Okay.
Okay, and I was fortunate enough, in probably a few months after the firm dissolved, because I stayed there and went down with the ship. But the firm that I was, at some point within a few months, I went to work for a different law firm.
Okay.
And that was Brewer Ketchum and somebody. It was the name of it.
Okay.
Eventually, I became a partner. And eventually, I actually became a named partner in the firm. And it's been probably close to 5 years I've retired.
Okay. How is the change from...
I was a little hesitant initially to retire, but because I didn't know what I would do with myself, because I have always been a really hard worker. So it would not be unusual for me, for instance, if I had a mediation or hearing or something, to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and start studying, getting prepared for that hearing.
So good. That's so good.
But that's in order to be prepared. And so I was, and I had I worked a lot of hours during that time. Well, actually, there's one more thing I have to.
Oh no,
remember.
Go ahead. Tell me.
In my senior year in law school, I got pregnant. Okay, so we graduated in March of 1978, the end of March. My daughter was born April 30th of 1978. And so that was a kind of an interesting time period. By then, I had gotten comfortable with law school. And so I kind of understood the process. And it was that was probably the time that I enjoyed most in law school, was during that time period, because I felt comfortable that I could do
everything,
the things that I needed to do.
You did do them. That's actually really good. I think having to do both, I think that would make you not enjoy it as much, but you...
I remember taking my last exams and I was just giggling to myself because I felt so comfortable.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's actually really good. In Thrill, you were just like, I got this. I kicked 1L year, 2L. That's good. And that's a long way from being afraid that your amazing grades weren't your grades to like being so comfortable and understanding that this is what you had to do to get it done. So you knew that the exam came and you were like, yeah, I know that. And you did that. That's very good.
You know what? Another thing happened in my career that I think is significant. When I first went to the first law firm, that firm was mostly real estate and some litigation. But they were wanting to branch out and to do some other things. They wanted to do some government work. Actually, they wanted to do some bond work. And they decided at some point that I should be one of the ones taking the lead on doing the bond work. Now, the firm didn't know how to do bond work, so we had to learn how to do bond work. But Richard Swan also he was like he was old school in the Central Florida area, and so he knew a lot of people. He had a lot of connections. And we were able to get some bond work, which, like I said, I had to learn how to do bond work.
To do that.
But, and so that gave me another niche that I had. And in fact, that was also, we were still in the days when affirmative action was a positive thing. And I think that it was important to governmental entities to see minorities involved in the vendors that they were choosing.
Okay.
And so I think that was helpful to the firm because we got to do a lot of bond work. I learned an awful lot about bond work.
Okay.
Yes. And then when I went to the next law firm, they didn't do bond work. They were mostly litigation. They did a lot of medical negligence work. And but they thought, well, gee, maybe you can help develop this practice area. And we decided to do that by trying to go and get some of the work from Orange County government, some bond work from Orange County government.
Okay.
Because a lot of lawyers in town didn't do bond work. We were able to get some bond work, a little, not much, but there was an African American on the county commission at the time.
Okay.
And one of her, and then we also had a elected the first female county mayor. Okay, and she was very interested in opening up the bidding process for getting work for county government. It was important to her that minorities be incorporated into anything that was the county work. And at some point, the African American county commissioner, and she said this to somebody, I think the county attorney or something. She told him, not in my presence, I was not even aware of it, that that firm wasn't going to get any more bond work unless they made me a partner. Now,
that's good.
And I say that simply to say that's why it really is important that we be in every facet of government and corporate America, because people want to hire people that look like them.
That's true.
And so I became a partner in that law firm. And from there, and that was bond work. That was just, if the county wanted to issue bonds for whatever they needed, a sewage plant or whatever they needed to issue bonds for.
Okay.
But because I worked with different ones in county government, we also decided, well, gee, maybe we should try and get some work from their litigation, because governmental entities are sued all the time. So because these people already knew me and the quality of work that we did, that I think that increased our chances of getting work in other areas, other practice areas. So we then wound up getting to do work for the in the litigation section for the county, and also the county and the city at that point had an arrangement whereby they both they self-funded.
Okay.
It was a joint operation with the county and the city, and they would select their insurer and some other things. I said self-funded, but it's really they joined together in some fashion to get better insurance rates.
Okay.
And so we were able to get work through them. Okay. Through that. And then, so our reputation grew, and we then wound up doing some work for the state of Florida, some work.
Okay.
And so I guess that's really that's probably more than enough.
That's good. That's actually a really, I want to say, broad cross-section of, experience. You have, the whole circle. You've changed you still worked, I guess, with governmental entities, but you changed what you did, and you added serious value to both firms that you worked with. So I think that's very good.
We did a lot of things. Our firm did. We had a lot of high-profile cases, a lot of it, it was a very good experience for me, and it was, I think, a good experience for our firm as well.
Okay. Second firm.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, the first one was mostly bond work and real estate work.
Okay. And then the second one was more like, I guess, a cross section.
It was definitely a cross section because, you would have inmates suing for all kinds of reasons, maybe excessive force claims, you name it. I found myself going to do depositions in lots of prisons all over the state and all kinds of things. So it was, we had to, it was quite an interesting time in my life.
Okay. Do you want to add anything else?
I can't think of anything more to add.
You're good. No, I think you added a lot, and I like that you gave advice as I went along, or I took it as advice as I went along. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes.